even get choked up when I think about it. If anything like this would have happened to my brother, I would be livid. So I think I look at Trayvon's picture and I see my brother.
I look at that boy's picture and my heart breaks for that family. We lost a child and we know what it's like when you lose a child, and it's just the most blatant case of racism, and it's just outrageous.
Voices from all over America speaking out. Florida's Stand Your Ground law gives people the right to use deadly force and call it self-defense. The law allowed George Zimmerman to not only shoot and kill a 17-year-old Trayvon Martin, but it has enabled Zimmerman to walk the streets as a free man. So how did the law pass the Florida House overwhelmingly and the Senate unanimously? Well, how about help from the NRA? Stand Your Ground was a top priority of the NRA back in 2005. In fact, Governor Jeb Bush signed the bill with the National Rifle Association's lobbyist Marion Hammer at his side. At the time, Hammer told UPI people shouldn't have to depend on law enforcement for protection in every situation, calling criticism of the measure silly. Bush, the governor then, supported that sentiment.
It's common sense to allow people to defend themselves, and to have to, when you're in a position where you're being threatened, there's a life-threatening situation, to have to retreat and put yourself in a very precarious position, you know, defies common sense.
Former Democratic State Senator Walter Campbell, who supported and co-sponsored the bill in Florida, now says the measure was sold to lawmakers as a way to expand self-defense rights. Campbell now admits the law is being abused. Along those lines, State Representative Dennis Baxley, another co-sponsor of the measure, also known as a Castle Doctrine law, says he stands by it but believes it is not being applied properly.
There's nothing in the Castle Doctrine statute that provides authority for you to pursue or confront other people. This is a self-defense law. There's nothing in the statute to protect somebody who is pursuing and confronting other people.
So doesn't anybody on the Sanford Police Department know the law? I'm joined tonight by attorney Mike Papantonio, also host of the Ring of Fire radio show. Mike, sort this out for it. What's at the crux of all of this? The interpretation of this law?
Well, it is. As a prosecutor, Zimmerman could be charged with premeditated murder, Ed. There's no need for a grand jury. The grand jury is simply a way for the state attorney's office to cop out and to pass the buck on this one. Premeditated murder, a plan to commit premeditated murder, can take place in 3 to 5 minutes. It can be formulated in that short a time. The elements of premeditation certainly exist here. The child was running away. There was no question about it. He was running away from the point of conflict. The shooter had been clearly warned, don't pursue, we'll take care of it, let the professionals take care of it. And rather than the shooter having a reasonable fear of harm, and those are the key words, a reasonable fear of harm for himself, it's clear that there was abundant evidence that Zimmerman was acting out of rage about this African-American child in his neighborhood. He had stated that these people get away with things like that, and it just shows that there was more going on in this man's mind than simply being a neighborhood watch. So the real question comes down to this. What state of mind is the issue? State of mind comes down, and the prosecutors need to focus on state of mind, what the state of mind of that person was when the child was running away, taking himself away from the conflict, after the shooter had been told, do not pursue. So here you have this character that is, you know, he's been doing this for years, driving around the neighborhood, hunting. The only way I can characterize it is kind of hunting for something. The real thing that concerns me, Ed, is you see this type of thing happen where charges aren't brought, usually where there is a confidential informant, where somebody has been working for the authorities in some capacity. You remember, this is a man who was charged with battery on a police officer. I think it's remarkable that that was just dropped out of thin air. You don't get away with battery on a police officer. And
yeah.
you almost ask yourself, was that a time that he became an informant? We don't know. There's been no discussion about that, but that's something these lawyers need to be asking about. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense that they failed to perform even basic forensics.
Mike, has the NRA done a terrible disservice to the state of Florida and other states by passing this law under the guise that, hey, they got to protect gun rights. Look what this has delivered us.
The real problem to me, Ed, is not the NRA is the problem, but the real problem is the politician who jumps behind the NRA simply because the NRA is feeding him a bunch of campaign money. That's what happened here.
Yeah.
When Jeb Bush thought it was a good idea to pass this, if you follow the money on it, it was the NRA. As a matter of fact, Jeb Bush at one point said, "Listen, you got my brother George elected. I'm grateful for that." And then you start following the money on this. There was no reason for this law to pass.
So there was very little pushback. It was very little pushback on this law in Florida because of the influence of the NRA. Now, moving forward, do you have any confidence that the grand jury, with the character of this part of the country, is going to be able to deliver justice?
Ed, people don't understand. The grand jury is going to be completely influenced by the state attorney who presents the evidence. This state attorney obviously has blown this case from the beginning. So to think that a grand jury is going to be able to be influenced in a positive way by this prosecutor is very far-fetched.
And what about the Justice Department being involved?
Well, the Justice Department, if anything, at best, Ed, it's going to cause the state attorney to maybe try a little bit harder. But from what the Justice Department can really do here from the standpoint of a civil rights case or a hate crime case, it's going to be a long stretch.
Yeah.
The positive thing is the Justice Department looking over the shoulder may cause these officers and the state attorney's office to do the right thing.
And quickly, do you see this law being changed in Florida because of this?
Probably not. The NRA has such a strong hold in lobbying here in this state to be very difficult.
All right, and it's in 23 states around America. Mike Papantonio, thanks for joining us tonight. Paul Ryan is trying to sell his budget to the people. It will actually harm the most. Congressman Steve Israel tells us why the Republicans are pushing such a dangerous